welcome back to the Four League Report. I'm Dan DiPietro. Today we have a special guest on, my first guest on the podcast. It is Zack Barba from. Go ahead, Zack. You plug your podcast.
Okay. What's up, everybody? I'm Zack Barba. I am the founder, co-host of the Kingdom Sports Podcast. We've had many different names over the years. Dan was big regular on our show, and it was awesome. Still going strong. And Dan's asked me to be here, and I'm psyched. This is awesome.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you on. I remember when you first asked me to be a guest on your pod, and it was like. It's like, man, this is so cool, and to see what you've done with it over the last 5 years is really amazing. And I'm really proud of you, man. And I wish you nothing but continued success with it. Um, but let's talk some sports, shall we? So
Shall we?
we've got a lot going on right now. Particularly in the NBA offseason. Well, first, give me your feelings on how the playoffs played out in the NBA and how that changes the landscape going forward.
Well, obviously the West was pretty much what we all expected, right? The Western Conference was way more competitive. We knew it was going to come down to OKC and San Antonio. It went to a game seven. OKC was undermanned. They had Jalen Williams was hurt for pretty much the whole season with hamstring problems. But they still pushed the Spurs to a game seven, and the Spurs ended up winning. That team's not going anywhere for a really long time. Everyone there is 22 years and younger. So, good luck if you're in the Western Conference for the next 10 years. In terms of the Eastern Conference, I was pretty confident that the Knicks would have a deep run. I was pretty confident in the Pistons having a deep run. They're in the number one seed. We had the Cavs. They were pretty good this year. And the Knicks just steamrolled everybody. They had a 16-3 playoff record, won the first championship that they've won in 53 years, beat the Spurs in 5 games. The Spurs were clearly not experienced. The lights were definitely too bright. Even the coach there is young. Everyone there is young. So they're only going to learn from this. And we were all saying when the Knicks were in there, they were like, just win this one. Like, just win this one, because then you don't have to worry about it, because the Spurs and the Thunder, like, they're just not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere for a while. So just win this one, and it won't matter, for the foreseeable future.
and the Nuggets are still there too. I mean,
yeah, the Nuggets are still there.
As long as Jokic is in the league and there's there's some talent around Jokic, I feel like they could contend in the West as well. Yeah, I remember thinking to myself after game 3 in that first round against the Hawks, I'm like, oh, no, this is it, man. The Knicks, it still just isn't it. Mike Brown is going to be a one and done, and I'm sure they're going to go after Jason Kidd again or whoever else they're going to decide to go after, and it's probably not going to matter. And man, I probably. What are your thoughts on what I think is like one of the greatest adjustments mid-season, especially in the middle of the playoffs, that I've ever seen in the NBA? And it was the decision to essentially let Karl Anthony Towns become point forward, point center, whatever you want to call him, where he was just basically became a playmaker at the top of the key, and Brunson was playing a lot more off the ball. What are your thoughts on that? Have you ever seen anything like that?
I've never seen an adjustment like that for a 7-footer in a playoff series, let alone a regular season. Yeah, we all knew that, Karl Anthony Towns is a pretty decent passer. He's a pretty decent playmaker, even when his time in Minnesota. So, like, we knew he could pass, but like this whole offensive scheme change where he became the point center, and Brunson now was off the ball more. Josh Hart was off the ball. OG Anunoby was off the ball. And like Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson like became like almost the main ball handlers. Like, it was very, very strange and odd to see, but it works. I mean, as soon as they made that adjustment, their offense completely opened up, and defenses, whether they were running man or whether they were running zone, they couldn't stop it because there was no answer for a point center randomly in the playoffs, especially for a young team like the Hawks. I mean, that is a young, scrappy team. That the only team that made the Knicks lose twice in any playoff series this year. So clearly they got some young talent and the future's bright there. They just gave their coach an extension. Um, so yeah, it was wild. It was definitely wild to see, and not something that I'm used to.
No, certainly not. And I mean, and then, Brunson just took it to a whole new level after that. You could tell that he was playing inspired basketball. The whole team was rallying behind him. The performances from, everybody from OG Anunoby, who had the crazy tip in game 4 that'll probably live in infamy, and there might even be a statue of that one day outside of the Garden. Everything from that to Landry Shamet and Mitchell Robinson. I feel like, Mitchell Robinson's a veteran now, but I feel like everybody kind of knows who he is now. He's kind of on that level of a superstar on the defensive end and on the boards, in my opinion.
The
So
stats don't show what he is.
exactly, he's the worst free throw shooter we've ever seen. I get that. And he's not a good shooter in general. He's a catch and dunk guy, but that's not where his value is. I think there's a really good reason why we saw every team at some point employ the hack-a-Mitch, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But with all that being said, now that the dust is settled and the parade is over, we had James Dolan essentially come out and admit, you know, pretty much like point blank on the radio on the Craig Carton show, that this team wouldn't be going into the second apron. It's also being reported that the Knicks front office wants to go into the second apron in order to keep the team together. So somebody's going to win there, and it's usually the owner. So the Knicks will not be spending money to keep the team together, would be my prediction. And the fallout from that is that Mitchell Robinson's going to be gone. Landry Shamet's going to be gone. They did re-sign Alvarado, which is nice because they don't have a ball handler behind Brunson if he left. So kind of turning the page to NBA free agency here. Who, in your opinion, are, like the prize free agents that teams are going to be targeting, and which teams are best positioned to acquire those players?
Well, believe it or not, the number one free agent that's going to happen on the 30th is LeBron James.
Oh,
He's
good
going to
call.
be a free agent. He has not spoken to the Lakers. There's been no re-sign talks yet. There's legitimate interest from the Warriors. He's always wanted to play with Steph. There's a legitimate interest for a reunion in Cleveland. There's legitimate interest in a reunion in Miami. Pat Riley's a psycho. So, especially after the Heat traded for Giannis. And I think that's what we're going to see more, to answer your question. I think we're going to see more sign and trades than straight up free agent signings, because I don't think this free agent class is very strong. There's just a lot of chatter with a lot of different players, and teams that have cap space that use that cap space as an asset to attach draft picks, to take on contracts. I think we're going to see a lot of that. Obviously, outside of LeBron James, the number one prize is probably Jalen Duran. I don't know how you say his name, the center from the Pistons.
Yeah.
22 years old, all NBA. he wants 40 million a year. The Pistons don't want to give him 40 million a year. They're going to offer 30. He wants to just explore a sign and trade. The Pistons don't want to explore a sign and trade. They want to keep him because, of course, you want to keep him. 22 years old and all NBA already. That's crazy. Um, but because of what we saw from Karl Anthony Towns, all these teams now are looking for centers. Like all these teams want centers, not necessarily a point center, but having a big guy in the middle is like kind of maybe going back to more traditional basketball. And that's why I think Mitchell Robinson is going to be highly coveted. You're going to see Walker Kessler, the restricted free agent from Utah. There's a lot of restricted free agents. This is a strong restricted free agent class. Walker Kessler, Jalen Duran, a couple other players. LeBron James is unrestricted. But I think the main players that we're going to see get moved are the stars that will be traded for. We've already seen Giannis get traded. We saw LaMelo Ball get traded to Minnesota, for a haul of picks. And, that's a new big three in Minnesota. All of a sudden, that's a crazy backcourt. Julius Randle got traded to the Nets. The Nets didn't pick up the option of one of their young forwards to free up $7 million of cap space today. They moved Duran Sharp's deadline day an extra day to the 30th. Jaylen Brown is ranting on social media.
Yeah, I'm happy you said that. That has been absolutely wild. And when I looked at the odds today for his next team, the highest odds are still the Celtics, which kind of boggles my mind. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't traded. Brad Stevens is one of the better executives in the league. I mean, one of the rare guys in league history that's won Coach of the Year and Executive of the Year. I think him, Larry Bird, and maybe two other guys have ever done it before. So clearly, he's a genius basketball mind. I don't think he gets traded. It's very interesting that Jason Tatum has pretty much stayed quiet no matter what. And I know a lot of people give him shit for being a little corny, but he doesn't give you headaches. So
No, he
I don't know.
certainly doesn't.
I don't know if it's because Jaylen Brown is a headache or he just feels disrespected. And everyone wants to talk about analytics and like over analytically, he's not a great player. But like analytic wise, when you do look into it, like he is a great player. So it's just really weird. I just think there's a weird narrative around him.
Yeah, and
Um,
this seems to have been going back for, it feels like this is something that's been going on for a long time now. I
yeah.
remember last offseason there was a lot of noise about him and whether he was going to get traded, and now that noise is even louder. So it's like at this point, I would just kind of be surprised if he isn't traded. I know that that's not the best thing for the Celtics long term, but the way that he's going off on Twitter right now, it's just I don't know. It's tough to see an organization like Boston kind of just swallowing that and moving, just keeping him and seeing what happens. But yeah, Giannis Antetokounmpo traded to the Heat. I'm glad you brought that up. For 4 players, 4 first-round picks, and a pick swap. Absolutely the blockbuster of the offseason so far. Does it move the needle at all for you for the Heat, or do they still have a lot of work to do?
I mean, it moved the needle in terms of what Vegas thinks. Their title odds doubled when they got Giannis. So obviously Vegas believes in a front court of Bam and Giannis. I don't know who's going to handle the ball, and I don't know who's going to shoot the ball there.
Right.
Maybe they can sign a couple guys. I don't believe they drafted anybody. I know basketball is like the only sport that does. No, I think hockey does it too. I think basketball and hockey are the only two sports that have the draft first and then it's free agency.
Yes.
So I know the NBA draft happened first last week, and there was a bunch of storylines with that. Um, yeah, so I don't really know if the Heat really. I mean, obviously you need guards now. Like you need shooters to surround Giannis. Um, Bam is a great defensive player. Consistent defensive player of the year candidate. Giannis is defensive player of the year multiple times. So clearly they're trying to be smash mouth, play defense, dunk on your face. I don't think they're going to score a whole lot of points if this is their current makeup. He was either going to the Heat or the Celtics, and this time Pat Riley was just not going to be denied. The East is pretty competitive. At least going into this year, it seems like there's more parity, especially with the Knicks probably losing a couple of pieces. So if to answer the question, if it moves the needle for them, it probably does move the needle for them when you get a player of his caliber. Um, so yeah, I think it does.
If they get LeBron James, are we talking about the Heat as one of the favorites in the East?
Probably because that's the kind of player that they need. Like you need someone who can handle the ball, create separation, kick it out to the wings, like just run the offense. They don't have anybody to run the offense there right now. They need a floor general, and there's no better point forward in the history of the game. Even at 40 years old, LeBron still averages 25 and 5.
Yeah, he's
So
a mutant. He's a mutant.
yeah,
He's
he's a mutant.
absolutely a mutant.
So I think that would be cool. You want my opinion? I think he's going to go to the Warriors. I think he's just going to.
Really?
I think he's going to take the mid-level exception and just try to play with Steph and win one last ring. Because
Wow.
Steph's going to be 37, 38. Like I don't know how much longer he's got. LeBron knows he doesn't have much longer. The Warriors, they brought back Steve Kerr. They have a couple young pieces there. I think it would be crazy for the league if they did that. I just don't see him coming back to Los Angeles. I really don't, even though they could pay him a ton of money. The Lakers are number one in cap space so far this offseason. They are going to sign Austin Reeves. They're going to bring him back. He was one of the bigger unrestricted free agents, but he himself quoted as saying, I just didn't like this free agency class, so I'm just going to stay here and make a bag. He's a very good player. I think he's underrated too. I don't think LeBron James likes being second fiddle to Luka Doncic, and I think that was pretty evident. And there was a lot of smoke about that in the LA beat writers. So I don't think he's going back. I think he's either going back home to Cleveland to help Donovan Mitchell and James Harden win a title in the Eastern Conference, or he's going to try something completely different and try to win one with Steph. Because if you win one with the Warriors, now you've won one for Cleveland, now you've won one for Miami, and you've won one for Los Angeles. If you win one for the Golden State, you know, that's really trying to make people think you're better than Jordan. So
Oh, it definitely puts him in another category than he's already in, and that would be crazy, especially at his age. I never thought about Golden State for him. It really makes a lot of sense though. He's able to keep his family in LA and go and play in San Francisco for a year until he retires, or if he's going to retire, or whatever he's going to do.
yeah,
And it still kind of keeps things stable for him in the twilight of his career. So I didn't think about that. I did hear somebody mention the Clippers, which is also interesting because he would just be, the primary there, and nobody would even contest that. But yeah, that's really interesting. I did not think of Golden State, and I'm definitely gonna keep that one in mind. Um, then next we had LaMelo Ball traded to the the Timberwolves, the from Charlotte, and they received Naz Reid, who I think is a pretty good player, a very underrated player, and they also got a haul of picks and pick swaps. So Minnesota's clearly going all in the West as well. So, you know, we've got, maybe 3 or 4 teams that are going to be serious contenders in the West if you're going to include the Nuggets, which I'm still going to do. Um, and then if you have LeBron going to Golden State, then that makes 5. So the West would be absolutely insane if that happened. And man, at that point, it would just be pretty much a crapshoot. I know that the Spurs are the darling of the NBA, and everybody loves Wemby, and the stars of the team are 22, 21, and 20 years old, and they're only going to get better. But Man, there's just a lot of really good veteran players out in the West that are filling out starting team rotations right now. And then we had a trade today. Miles Bridges traded to Phoenix. The Hornets get Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, and a bunch of picks. Um, I'm not really sure about Phoenix. Maybe they're kind of like a middling borderline team at this point. What are your thoughts on them?
I think you're 100% right. I think they're a middling team. Um, they have Devin Booker still. Um, now they have Miles Bridges, he's one of the better power forwards in the league. He's just had some pretty serious off the court issues. But I guess he's gotten past that and he's been a good player for Charlotte. Um, I could see maybe Phoenix being like an 8 or 7 seed, maybe a play-in team, as it currently stands. Obviously we have to see, the dust has to settle post draft, post free agency, excuse me. But it clearly looks like, all these new rules about anti-tanking, and it just seems like Charlotte's tanking. Like, so it's maybe they're just like, let's just try to have as many first round picks in this next draft as possible to see where we land and like then go from there. Um, that to me what that might be the new strategy, because clearly some of these teams that have been bad or tried to tank are like, all right, well, let's just try to win now because it hasn't worked out. And Charlotte's like, we're still going to try to tank. So it's a little interesting.
Yeah, that is, and I'm happy you brought that up. So that the new anti tanking rules, basically penalize anybody from doing what we normally see from the bottom feeders of the NBA going forward. They essentially get lottery balls taken away from them,
Yeah.
and their chances of getting top picks uh, decrease. So I agree. Really interesting move by the Hornets to go in this direction. And you're probably right. They're probably just saying to themselves, you know what? Everybody is probably going to do the whole, let's just try to compete now, no matter what. And we're just going to accumulate picks and see what happens. So I do agree that that's what's going on there. And then speaking of players who have been having problems off of the court, John Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies, it has been reported that teams are asking the Grizzlies to attach a pick to him in any trade. So I think this pretty much signals that the league is just not going to take a chance on this guy. I don't think anybody around the league thinks that he's stable or mature enough or whatever the case may be anybody's superstar going forward or even just to be on their team going forward. So I found that to be a really interesting report. You wonder about how this guy's career is going to finish. I'm rooting for him. I'm praying for him. I hope he turns things around, but right now it does not look good.
No. And it is a shame because I think he's uber talented. And I don't think this has anything to do with his game or anything like that.
No.
I just think he's a knucklehead and he's got the wrong people around him. If I had to pick a team that is going to take a chance on him, that will trade for him, it has to be a team that has nothing to lose, and it has to be a team that needs some buzz around it. It'll probably be the Pelicans. I could see Joe Dumars giving that a shot. He's the new president of basketball operations in New Orleans. He wants to keep Zion. He wants to rebuild the team in a small ball fashion. He's looking to try to dump off Trey Murphy the third because he can't. They're not going to be able to afford him. He's going to He's going to want a big contract. He's a really good player. Averaged 22, 5 and 5 as a shooting guard. And then I think they're gonna. If any team's gonna do it, I could see the Pelicans doing it. So they may even be like, you don't have to attach a pick. We'll take them, but we'll need this in exchange. So
Okay. Yeah, I could see that being the case for sure. Definitely a team with nothing to lose. I could see maybe taking a chance on them. Um, so you're you're a Nets fan. Let's uh let's kind of go through, I guess their roster right now and the state of the franchise, what you're going to be looking out for, who you think needs to stay, who they need to build around? What should the strategy be for the Nets going forward?
So, as a Nets fan, we have gone through, especially over the last, I want to say, 25 years, it's just been a roller coaster, right? The highest of highs and the lowest of lows. The Nets had at one point were in back-to-back NBA finals with Jay Kidd and Richard Jefferson, Kerry Kittles, Kenyon Martin, and those boys. And then a few years later, they won 12 games and had 70 losses. And then we moved to Brooklyn, and then we have the big five with, Joe Johnson, Darren Williams, Brooke Lopez, Paul Pierce, KG. Then we had the blow up again, and then we were crappy. And then it became fun again with D'Angelo Russell and a couple other fun players. And then boom, we get Kevin Durant, we get Kyrie Irving. Now we're cooking. Then we get James Harden. You know, as a Nets fan, sometimes it's hard to keep your head on straight. There's just been so much going on. Really, the epitome of a roller coaster of a franchise lately. They've had a failed tankathon. They tried tanking twice. They failed. Only got the eighth pick last year and only got the sixth pick this year. I think their
Dude,
biggest need.
Vince Carter's face coming back from that
Oh my God.
lottery thing, man. You could tell
He
how
just,
disappointed he was.
you know
He
what?
just seemed so frustrated.
Because it is frustrating. They had the highest odds to win the number one pick, and you don't even get in the top four. I mean, it's just it doesn't make any sense. So I
Yeah.
hate the lottery. I've always hated the lottery. Um, but I think our biggest need is center. I do think Jaron Sharp is a nice young player. I'm not willing to bank on us trying because clearly they're trying to win games now. Like clearly, Sean Marks and the front office were like, okay, like this whole tanking lottery thing is not working. The NBA is not going to give us a high draft pick. The next picking sixth overall last week was their highest draft pick since taking Kenyon Martin in the year 2000. Like how crazy is that? Like I
Wow.
had to I had to double check that stat. So that's the highest the Nets have picked in over 25 years. So like, can I be that mad as a fan? I don't know, but and they drafted Mikel Brown Jr. out of Louisville, 19-year-old kid. Had a back issue for half the season, but when he was on the court, I mean, he dropped 45, 5 and 7 in the NCAA tournament.
He looked
So it
great.
was
He looked great.
he looked great. He's the highest drafted guard since Kenny Anderson. There's a lot of history with that. They're going to give this kid the keys. He's going to be the starting point guard. We've needed a point guard for a really long time. Obviously, past Kyrie Irving. So we haven't had anybody to handle the ball. I like that we added Julius Randle. I think he's a little bit disrespected and a little bit underrated. I just didn't really like his fit in Minnesota. I didn't like him next to Rudy Gobert. And clearly it didn't work. But he's a floor raiser. He's a culture builder. He plays hard no matter what, at any time, at any place. Knicks fans know that well. He himself dragged the Knicks to two straight, semifinals appearances. And I know he's a little bit older, but he's apparently, from what I've read in the reports, he's very excited to be back to New York. He's going to be in Brooklyn. He actually wants to stay in Brooklyn. He's interested in signing an extension.
Okay.
Um, we're going to see if that actually happens because there's still 2 more years left on his deal. I think if the Nets acquire anybody in free agency when that opens up, I could see them trading for somebody. They have the second most cap space behind the Lakers after the Randall trade. They need a. I like Michael Porter Jr. This is the last year of his contract. I don't know if they want to keep him long term. He is a very nice player. He's an NBA champion with the Nuggets. Help them win it. So I wouldn't mind keeping him to build a championship pedigree and mentality here.
Hmm.
But I would not be surprised if he gets moved during this free agency on an expiring contract. That's a pretty major asset, especially if you're going to upgrade the position. If the Nets trade for a Jaylen Brown, like Michael Porter would go back to match salary, and Jaylen Brown would be the new starter. I really like Igor, their eighth overall pick last year. He was their best rookie by far. had a pretty good rookie year. Injuries kind of derailed it a little bit, and they were like, "Listen, can you just sit down? We're trying to lose these games here." So, he really didn't get to play as much as I would like him to play. But yeah, I want a center. I think Mitch Robinson is in play, especially because if you have to trade for Jalen Duran, then you have to sign him to a big deal. If you trade for Walker Kessler, you got to sign him to a big deal. But Walker Kessler and Jalen Duran, that's top of the top. Like those are the top young centers in this game, and I would love them. But Mitch Robinson to me wouldn't be a consummation prize or a third place prize. This is a good player, grit, toughness. He just brings that to your team, and it doesn't show in the stats like we mentioned earlier. But he 100% was a factor in the Knicks winning a championship. So I wouldn't mind giving him a bag. It would make sense for him to stay. This way, he doesn't have to go out to LA. He doesn't have to move. He doesn't have to do anything. He just plays for a different borough. So I actually would not be surprised that he ends up signing with the Nets. Um, I would like Trey Murphy. I know there were rumblings that the Nets and Clippers were talking with the Pelicans about Trey Murphy. I would love him as my shooting guard. He's better than Igor, even though I like Igor. I'll take Trey Murphy. He's only 22. So for the Nets, it's all about winning games this year, trying to be competitive, trying to be relevant again. The storyline, even if they get Jaylen Brown or even if they get anything like that, I'm going to be most interested about our new point guard. Because the biggest storyline out of the NBA draft was Mikal Brown and Darius Acuff Jr. Um,
Yes.
that was the big thing everyone was talking about, which is kind of crazy to me because the Clippers picked before both of those teams and picked the worst one out of both of those guys, but no one's talking about the Clippers, so it's just a little weird.
Yeah, that is a little
Um,
weird, and to me it was clearly between Acuff Jr. and Mikel Brown, or Acuff
yeah,
and Mikel Brown Jr. Pardon me. I didn't think it was close. I think Acuff could absolutely come in and terrorize the league as like an Allen Iverson type scorer right away. And then yeah, man, I mean, there's a ton of intrigue with Mikel Brown Jr. and you had Donovan Mitchell basically come out and voice his support for that pick for the Nets, which you don't usually see players do that kind of stuff. So seems to be a pretty good pick. I definitely agree that he's going to be the most intriguing player to watch for the Nets. And I understand what you're saying regarding the possibility of the two younger center prospects and what it would take in trade and all that kind of stuff. To me, man, get yourself the best proven guy on the boards and a really good rim protector. To me, that's Mitchell Robinson. I think if the Nets signed Mitchell Robinson, give him the bag, basically keep him there till the end of his career. I just think they changed the whole conversation surrounding the team. That's veteran leadership. Now a champion, right? So now you get to say that you're bringing a champion and a veteran leader to that team who's going to anchor the defense. And um, I don't know what kind of a defensive player Mikel Brown Jr. is, or what the Nets look like out on the perimeter defensively, but you start to now bring in some guys on the perimeter who could defend, and the entire conversation is just going to continue to change around the team.
yeah, and obviously the big thing between Acuff Jr. and Brown Jr. was Acuff Jr. is horrible on defense. He is a very poor defender. He just shoots the lights out and is a great playmaker, like you said, Allen Iverson type, um, offensive performer. The problem, and I think this is why, and no one, I haven't seen anybody talk about this yet, and it just kind of proves that no one really pays attention at all. The Nets, if anyone remembers, a few years ago, drafted a guard who does nothing but score and can shoot the lights out, and that was Cam Thomas. And he's out of the league right now because he's completely uncoachable and his defense is awful. So I don't think the Nets wanted to go down that route again. I think
Mm,
they wanted to get somebody that was a little bit different. And it's not like Brown Jr. can't score. He was lighting it up in the NCAA tournament. And he was one of the top AAU basketball kids in the whole country. He has a gold medal for AAU FIBA 18 and 19. So this is
Wow.
clearly a really good player. And I'm sure guys like Stephen A. Smith had no idea that Brown Jr. had any of those accomplishments. So, or Bill Simmons, because they just don't know anything. And I'm sure Acuff Jr. will be great for Sacramento. I think he is very smart to want Sacramento, so that they could like market him as the new savior for the Kings, the go-to guy, and this is my team. And that just tells me, like, all right, like you wanted to go to the Kings because you want to be the guy. Like if you go to the Nets, I don't think Acuff Jr. is the guy right now, because Randall's there, Michael Porter Jr. is there, Mitchell Robinson may be on the way. I just don't think it was a fit. I don't think it mentally was a fit. And I applaud the Nets for doing that, and I'm plugged into Nets Twitter, Nets social media. This was pretty universal. Everyone wanted Brown Jr. over Acuff for the reasons that I had stated. And yes, we are here. Nets fans exist. Most of us are still just in Jersey. So,
Yeah, that's been a really funny thing over the last couple of months with the Knicks run and everything is, they're like what, 10 Nets fans? But no,
yeah, 10 Nets fans, and it's in jest. And
it
I,
is.
I never disliked the Knicks. I'm New Yorker nowhere, no matter what. So if a New York team is good, and I get it. It's. But I did see a couple of funny comments. It's like, well, listen, I know you Knicks fans were in the Garden when KD and Kyrie were playing, so let's not switch up real quick.
That's very true, man.
So
And that town is like that. There you have your hardcore people, no matter what, that hate the other teams and they'll never go to their ballparks and all the other stuff. And then you'll have the people that are kind of like in the middle, where they're a really dedicated fan, but you'll see them in the other stadiums, from time to time. They're not like contentious people at all. They're they're
yeah,
they're happy-go-luckies. And then you have your people who just, you know, they have their entertainment dollar and they want to be entertained, and they're just going to go wherever the entertainment is.
yeah,
That's pretty much like the three levels of fandom in the New York metro area.
yeah, I completely agree. And even the Nets won 20 games last year, and they had a 99.2% home sellout rate. So they were still selling tickets.
Yeah, but listen, there's no question they're going to remain in Brooklyn. It'd be crazy for them to move anywhere else, right?
Yeah,
They
they had to move. All this talk from certain Knicks fans and like other people on ESPN, they should just go back to Jersey. I'm like, we're just not smart humans. We're just not smart people. You know,
Yeah, we
like
we're
economically,
certainly not paying attention to the statistics
yeah,
compared
we're not
to.
paying it. We're not paying any attention. Like economically, how do you not see that them being in Brooklyn, New York, is in a brand new arena, is better than the Meadowlands in New Jersey? I mean, come on now.
And it's a gorgeous arena.
Yeah,
I've been in
it's
the
a
arena
beautiful
multiple
arena.
times. It's absolutely state of the art. Everything about it is state of the art. It's going to be great for a long time. The Nets have the Nets are always going to have a chance to capture the city, regardless of what anyone says. Everybody got caught up in the moment with the Knicks championship, and it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And once they start playing basketball next season, it's just going to be, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah, and you made a great point about that. And I was talking to Rich and Jason about it, and we had brought up, because Brunson's first year was 2022, and that was towards the end of the KD Kyrie era. James Harden was already gone. They had brought in Ben Simmons. Oh God. And it was Kyrie and KD were still running the show, and it was because it made the rounds on Twitter, because Knicks fans and Nets fans were going at it, and there was a post on the title of the New York Sports Post, and it was Kyrie stripping the ball from Jalen Brunson, and it was said, "This is not a rivalry," and Nets win 9 in a row against the Knicks. So like not that long ago, like it was a completely different story.
Completely different.
It was a
Yes.
completely different story. Now you flip the coin, the Knicks have now beaten the Nets 9 times in a row. So like it's always going to be there. The NBA changes fast, so it's just how soon we forget is all I have to say.
Yeah, yeah. And you wonder what the how long the window is going to be open for the Knicks anyway. Jalen Brunson, it's crazy to say he's already like a 28 going on 29-year-old player. I mean, the NBA is different. You don't keep that explosiveness and all that playmaking forever unless you're just like one of these LeBron James types who's chiseled out of stone and pours $2
Yeah.
million into his body every year. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So we'll see how long the window is for the Knicks, and definitely going to be looking out for the Nets, particularly to see what they do in free agency. And with that being said, let's move on to some baseball. I'd like to start with the elephant in the room, and that is the highly and deeply contentious CBA negotiations that are going on right now.
Oh boy.
So, ahead of the current agreement, which is expiring in December, you know, Major League Baseball is aggressively pushing for a salary cap and a salary floor beginning in 2027. They claim that the payroll disparity is harming competitive balance and fan hope. They launched a public campaign called Leveling the Playing Field to justify the cap and floor system. And the Players Association is essentially pushing back on this idea like, hey, a hard salary cap is just a non-starter. Like, we're not going there. You're taking money away from our players. They say Major League Baseball is framing and misleading facts and distracts from the real impact on player earnings with their campaign. Union chief is like, no question, we're very far apart. I mean, we're headed for no baseball. And I want to get this out there because I haven't covered this yet on the show. I really do believe we're headed for no baseball. I do believe that it's going to be for a minimum of 1 year that we're going to have a lockout. It's happened before.
Yeah, 94, right?
Yeah, it's happened in 94. It happened, I believe, in the early 80s. So, you know, Major League Baseball's latest proposal as of June 25th, 26th, whenever it was, you know, uh, max contract length limits, maximum 5 years, or for free agents switching teams, maximum 6 years for players re-signing with their current club. They would call that like a cornerstone player provision or whatever, and eliminating all deferred money and qualifying offers. Now, I will say the qualifying offers part to me is interesting because, you know, like, so essentially what they're doing with even wanting to get rid of the qualifying offers is just making sure nobody gets paid until free agency starts. So not only are they going to do this hard stance, salary cap and salary cap floor deal, but they want to take away qualifying offers, which is the only way that players actually get paid before free agency, unless the team takes a chance on young players on a long-term contract, which we have seen more often
Yeah,
in
we've
recent
definitely seen
years.
that.
But, like free agency eligibility, changes to 30 plus years. The proposed salary floor would be 171 million. The proposed ceiling would be 245 million. So what happens to the Dodgers? What happens to the Mets? What happens to the Yankees? Do they immediately have to cut salary if this was ever accepted and goes into effect? Like, there are just so many logistical things that I have questions about. And again, I feel like this is a road to nowhere, and we really need to enjoy this season of baseball because you just don't know when it's going to be back. I really think it could be longer than a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely messed up. I think you and me have been pioneering, or not necessarily pioneering, that's the wrong word to use, but champagning, whatever.
Campaigning, yes.
Campaigning. Listen, it's late. Campaigning that there is not going to be baseball next year because you and me kind of see the writing on the wall. Yeah, I mean, what happens to the Dodgers, the Mets, and the Yankees? You know, those are the three highest payrolls in baseball. Do those deals good for the players get grandfathered in, and then you can't do anything that would exceed this new imaginary salary cap? Um, do they have to cut salary now? All of a sudden, like, the biggest contract I know on the Yankees books right now is, Stanton's contract is up in a year, but right now it's Judge. Like, so do you got to cut some of his salary? Are we cutting the rest of the team? Like, Garrett Cole's making a ton of money. Max Fried's making a ton of money. Like, what happens here? And you're right. I think there's a lot of logistical issues that need to be solved. I am of the opinion that the league needs a salary floor more than a salary cap, because I don't think that the league has a problem spending money on players. I think the league has a problem with 90% of the owners not wanting to spend money.
Agree.
Like, I understand the Dodgers, it's different, right? The Dodgers are a conglomerate of owners. It's a board of multiple mega billionaires. Steve Cohen of the Mets, he's the richest singular owner in all of sports. The Steinbrenners, Hal and his investors, they're the third richest entity in baseball. They're willing to spend all this money. And then you got teams like the Angels and the Pirates, who their owners are worth 5, 6, 7 billion dollars, but they're not willing to spend any kind of money to make their team any good. So I think a salary floor would be more important to the game than a salary cap. I can understand wanting both, because if you have one, you have to have the other, right? So I think at minimum, these teams like the Baltimore Orioles, the Miami Marlins, the Cincinnati Reds, Pittsburgh Pirates, teams like that, like, we need to start being serious. And if you want to compete, and, this whole notion of, all everyone does is buy championships and this and that, I just think it's a tiresome argument, because all these owners are just not willing to spend any money.
Yeah,
And
and where I think where baseball went wrong, and it's been like pretty much the wild, wild west of sports, right? Because owners pretty much just have full reign to do whatever they want, which is great. However, there do need to be some rules for your arguments about competitive balance. For instance, let's not have conglomerate, companies, corporations, whatever, be the owner of a team when you have other, singular owners, like the owner for the Athletics, like the owner for the Pirates, who just are not going to be able to spend with a conglomerate of, Magic Johnson and, whoever else is on that ownership is in that ownership group for the Dodgers. It's just not realistic. So it needs to be one way or the other. You can allow conglomerate owners, but then it needs to be a rule where, you know, all of them need to be conglomerate owners. And I just don't know how you do that. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. So until there ever comes a time where every team is owned by an ownership group like the Dodgers, it just seems to be a ridiculous conversation. Even when we do get a floor or a salary cap, you're just going to have those teams just spend to the floor. They're never going to go above the floor. That's the way that they're going to operate. They're in the business of making money. They don't care about being competitive. They're trusting their money ball strategies to continue to work for them, which, for some teams it does. Hey, the Pirates are churning out some prospects. The A's are churning out some prospects.
the Rays,
Nobody's saying they can't be good, but
yeah, yeah, no, I agree. And I think this is a massive. There's a huge hole. There's a big divide and gap between the Players Association and the owners, because it is taking money away from the players. It's point blank. Like, you're now limiting the players and what they could make in a non-salary cap world. So, but some of these players also need to realize, there's only like one Bryce Harper, like, there's only like one Juan Soto, so, like, the amount of players that have these mega contracts anyway, you could probably count on two hands. So a lot of these players also need to have their egos checked at the door a little bit. Like, Paul Skeens will probably make a lot of money. Like Tariq School Bowl is probably going to get a lot of money. Like there's just not a whole lot of that right now. There's not a whole lot of players like that are going to get a contract like that would be over the supposed salary cap that they want. But yeah, no, I don't think there's going to be any baseball next year. I would be shocked if there's baseball next year, because there's no way you're going to sit there and tell me that between now and December, the Players Association is just going to go, yeah, you know what, we want it. Like there's just no way. Like this is zero chance. When the World
Yeah.
Series is over and the CBA expires, also the Players Association has been in complete hell. They've lost two executives, the chairman due to inappropriate behavior in the office. So they've had like this interim head of the Players Association. We've had two new executives in the union. So like their house of cards isn't exactly set up. So they have no leverage. And if they think they have any leverage at all, they're crazy.
Yeah, they
So
totally sabotaged themselves. They really did. I mean, especially going into this one. I mean, this was the king of all of them, and they just completely sabotaged themselves.
yeah,
It's actually really wild.
the last CBA, the baseball started a month late. The last lockout was a month or two late. That was 7 years ago.
Yep.
That was right before COVID. That was like the year before the COVID year.
Yeah, it was
And
2018.
yeah, it was right. Yeah, 2018, 2019, because Mike Trout was like parading the players, like, hold the line, like, and
Right.
then, yeah, the season didn't start until May. It was like the first week of May. So if there was at least a lockout for that, you better believe there's going to be a really long lockout for this one.
I agree. And so yeah, your podcast, The Kingdom, is particularly a New York centric podcast. So we're gonna stick with those teams covering baseball right now, because we want to enjoy whatever's baseball is left before we don't get to watch it for a long time. Um, Carlos Mendoza out, and Steve Cohen and pardon me, and David Stearns have both made statements, both completely different statements. Stearns essentially, with a really heartfelt and emotional goodbye to Mendoza, clearly a guy he loved, a guy he did not want to fire, in my opinion. And I think, Steve Cohen just had enough. He promised Mets fans accountability when he took over the team. He also promised them a championship within 5 years, so we're pretty far away from that. So the question I have for you is, do you think any manager could have succeeded with this Mets roster this year?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe unless you're Terry Francona. But I just think it was, we all were kind of questioning. Like, it was very odd from the beginning that, like, I guess like an argument could have been made to not bring Pete Alonso back, right? Because he was older. He wanted a long-term deal. Like we've seen that happen in sports before, where that blows up, right? And it's a horrible situation. I get that. Because he is in Baltimore now, and he's not exactly lighting the world on fire in Baltimore this year. So that I'm not going to kill them so much for. I just think the reaction to it is just funnier. Because no matter what, he's still, even this year with the Orioles, he's still better than Jorge Polanco. And all these players that were brought in to replace them were playing out of position. Like this was the first time Jorge Polanco ever played first base, and he's hurt. He's been hurt for like 2 months now. He hasn't been playing. They brought Bo Bichette over from Toronto, who was going to the Phillies, but Uncle Stevie told David Stearns, overpay for this guy. I don't care what it takes. We need this. We need to win some games. He's a shortstop. They're playing him at third base. He's never played third base in his life, and he has an opt out after this year, which he's going to exercise.
I think he will as well. Yes.
So you have Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto ready to kill each other at any moment.
That's the craziest thing that I've ever seen or heard of in a clubhouse.
Yeah, clearly now Lindor's the problem, because they got rid of Jeff McNeil because they were fighting. They got rid of because Jack McNeil's actually having a pretty good year for the A's. They got rid of oh, he's in Texas now.
Oh, Nimmo.
Nemo. They did a Nemo for Marcus Simeon trade straight up, and Nemo's having a great year in Texas, and Simeon's having the worst year of his career because he's 36 years old. Of course, that was going to happen. Like, what are we doing here? You
Yeah.
know, so clearly this roster construction by David Stearns, like it's half trying to rebuild, half trying to win. Like you could
Right.
tell some of the moves that he made, he wanted to try to develop these younger players to do like what he did in Milwaukee is bring some guys up and like build this thing the long way and have like this factory of sustained success that's in Milwaukee. And then you have the other side of the coin, which is which is Jeff Cohen, and he's like, or Steve Cohen, he's like, I need to fill seats. Like, what do you mean? Like, no,
And
we need superstars, we need this, we need that. So it's like it's two methods of team building clashing with each other, and that's why you get a shit product. And
what 1000%. And it goes back to 2 off seasons ago when Juan Soto was a free agent. I don't believe that David Stearns, left to his own devices, was going to pay for Juan Soto. I believe Steve Cohen wanted to flex his muscles. I believe that he wanted to kind of do the whole, hey, there's a new sheriff in town, we're going to take one of the best players in baseball away from the big bad Yankees. We're going to start doing the bullying now. We're not going to be the ones who get bullied. I think that's 1000% what that is. Like you said, ticket sales, butts in the seats, and it's just been a clash with this guy ever since then. It's like you either need to hire a general manager that's going to see it your way, build the monster the way that you want to do, which is clearly the way that they tried to do it the first few years of him being the owner there, which I was all for. I was all for them doing that. They won 100 games in 2022 or whatever it was with Buck Showalter. So yeah, I think that this marriage is one that's not going to last too much longer. I really think that Steve Cohen is just going to run out of patience with Stearns. I know there are a lot of Mets fans out there that believe that David Stearns is essentially untouchable for whatever reason. I don't see that being the case. I think he'll be out by the end of the year. That's my prediction for that.
yeah, I think he'll be gone by the end of the year. And I think my other major Mets prediction is going to be Lindor will be traded.
Without a doubt.
Because he's clearly hampering this team. And if Juan Soto and Lindor cannot get along, you have to get rid of one of them, and you're not going to get rid of Soto.
No, they're not going to get rid of Soto.
But you know what? Soto's going to opt out though in 4 years or 3 years.
Yeah, but
now.
you know what? It's still 3 years from now, and whether there's a lockout or not, it won't count against it being a year used, obviously, with him under contract. That gives the Mets plenty of time to pivot right now this offseason, and I guarantee you, Steve Cohen and all the people around him are going to be telling him that, like, hey man, like you got this guy for 3 years. That's pretty much your guaranteed window right now. Let's go in the direction that makes the most sense and build this thing the right way. So yeah, I definitely agree that Lindor is going to get traded. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets just had a fire sale. Get rid of all the salary that is doing you no good. You're the second highest payroll in baseball, and you're the basically a bottom feeder in the National League. Like that's completely unacceptable. Shed all the salary, get a bunch of prospects, and be ready to spend for 2027 or 2028 or whatever it's going to be whenever we have baseball again. With that being said, let's finish up and pivot to the Yankees. Now, Aaron Judge has been out for a while, but what we've seen is the Yankees starting pitching, even with some guys going, not being available earlier in the year and then coming back and then other guys going down. We've seen a little bit more stability in the lineup this year. And And I think that this rotation is incredibly good. And I think that the closer that we get to playoff time, the better the rotation is going to look. I think that this is a team that is maybe one or two bullpen pieces away and a right hand hitting catcher away. Um, do you think that that's all it's going to take for the Yankees to go on a deep run this year?
I think the biggest need above all else is a right-hand hitting catcher. I mean, the worst kept secret is Ryan Jeffers. I think that's a matter of when, not if. I just think that's going to happen at some point, whether it be in the next couple weeks or anything like that. Because Austin Wells is a pile of crap and he's horrendous, batting 155 currently with 2 home runs. Amazing. Also, we like, do we need a shortstop? Like, because Caballero is a pretty damn good player this year, and he needs to be the everyday shortstop, or just have him be a utility guy and send Volpe back down because Volpe is a walking disaster, has 3 errors in the last 9 games. Like, what are we doing with this whole Volpe infatuation that Boone has? Because Boone has been
Yeah.
pretty consistent with the lineup, more so than we've seen from him this season. But as soon as Volpe became available again, now we're just having, like, we're playing bingo again with the lineup. And I know a lot of people are hurt. I know Judge is down. Trent Grisham's down. So these younger guys are getting opportunities. Spencer Jones um, playing a lot better with his second call up than his first call up. Dominguez is playing okay, but like they're holding it down. Like, they're holding it down. These young players in the outfield are holding it down. Cody Bellinger's been our best player all year. Cody Bellinger should be getting MVP votes. He probably won't, but he should be. The whole narrative of should the Yankees get Kyle Tucker, Cody Bellinger, that could be put to rest. Kyle Tucker is having an awful year in LA. He
Yeah.
looks completely. He is very, very uncomfortable. He's making limited media appearances. He's limiting the media from seeing him multiple times a week. There's something going on there. There's something weird going on with Kyle Tucker in LA that no one's talking about because, oh, look, it's Shohei Ohtani. Look at him pitch today. Woo! So it's just like, no one really cares. Um,
I think the Dodgers it's just it's kind of like a country club now where they don't really take the regular season seriously and they're just kind of just going to waltz into the playoffs and then take things seriously from there.
Yeah, well, they did that 2 years in a row, and it seems to work.
Yeah.
So, I would not be shocked. I think, yeah, a right-handed hitting catcher is the number one need. A couple of bullpen arms are a pretty big need. Um, we crapped on David Bednar like crazy in my last episode, or 2 episodes ago that I had with Ray. Bednar hasn't given up a run since May 18th.
He, he's
So,
he's good. He's definitely going to be one of the key pieces in
yeah,
the
so
bullpen.
clearly he's been the best closer in baseball, not named Aroldis Chapman, since the middle of May. So
And how about that, Aroldis Chapman? I mean, this guy is just
he's on all the juice. I don't want to hear it. You
he's,
you cannot look like that at 37 years old and be a baseball player. Like, this is no way. Anyway, um, but you know what? I think they do something wild, and I think they get Scooble. I think they go get Scooble,
I
and
just
it's
don't
just,
think they need Scooble though.
no,
You know, I
I,
think
I, I don't think they need Scooble, to answer your question. I don't think they need Scooble. I don't know how many bullpen pieces are really going to be available, but there's so much smoke with Scooble to the Yankees over the last month. It's a little frightening and it's a little weird. And it would be one of those trades that we have not seen them do in a very long time for this kind of a rental. That tells me that, like, there are people within baseball that know we're not going to have baseball next year. So, like, this really could be the last shot. And if you're going into the playoffs with your 4-man rotation of Skubal, Fried, Schittler, and then Cole, like, then you're just hoping that it doesn't matter what your bullpen is and your starters are going to go 8 innings.
well,
And
it's gonna have to be that way if they go that route because very rarely do you see any success with starting pitchers going into the bullpen and turning
very
into
rarely.
good bullpen help, especially in high leverage situations in the playoffs. It just doesn't happen. So that would be exactly what the Yankees would need if they went that route. They would have to hope for basically 7 to 8 innings. I mean, maybe like at least 7 innings every night out of their starter.
Yeah, and if you could put up 4 or 5 runs, then like you give yourself a nice cushion, and then if you blow it, then you blow it, and you deserve to lose. So I mean, yeah, listen, I don't think they need him, especially with the emergence of Cam Schlittler, who's been the best pitcher in all of baseball, by the way, who's been better than Skubal.
Mm-hmm.
The seventh round pick, kind of crazy that this dude's just, ever since he came to the league, he's just pretty much been the best. And easily the Cy Young Award winner this year for the AL. It's not particularly close. So I mean, they got that going. The lineup could still hit. They're still hitting bombs. And the other player that of major contention among Yankee fans is Jazz Chisholm. He got ejected today, arguing balls and strikes, or I believe it was a check swing because that notification popped up here. Um, we have a. I don't know. If we have a Jazz Chisholm problem, because we have a dilemma. I wouldn't call it a problem. I'd call it a dilemma. Jazz Chisholm leads all second basemen in the American League in WAR. He's clearly the
Mm-hmm.
best second baseman in the American League. He's the top 5 second baseman in all of baseball. He's a character. He's a little out there. He's chewing on lollipops while he's playing, and Boone got pissed about that. And it's like,
Rightfully so, man.
and like rightfully so, I get it. It's probably a little dangerous to be having a lollipop while you're playing baseball. So it's like it's just not really a smart thing to do anyway. Um, but he's having a really good year at the dish. Like he's had a really good June. He finished
Mm-hmm.
May strong. Like he's been one of our better hitters as of late. So like, what do you do at the end of the year with him? Like, do you pay him? Like he wants 300 million. I don't think he's getting 300 million from any team. I could see the Yankees maybe giving him 200 million over like, maybe 8 years, 6 years, because he's only 29. Um, that's tough for me because there's no clear and obvious upgrade to Jazz Chisholm right now, unless you think Lombard is a really good either second baseman, shortstop, or third baseman, because Ryan McMahon can't hit a beach ball, but he's had a really good June at the dish. And he was really good for us in the playoffs last year. I mean, he was flying all over that diamond, making defensive plays for us last year. So do I want to take that veteran out of a playoff lineup and just see what Lombard does in a high leverage situation? Because like we've seen what McMahon can do on the diamond in a high leverage situation, and that's pretty damn good. So do you just make Caballero the shortstop? Do you bring up Lombard and he's the shortstop and Caballero is your new utility guy? I don't know. Like, it is kind of like an embarrassment of riches a little bit right now. These are good problems to have if you're the Yankees, especially since the American League is so weak. I mean, the Mariners are number 2 in run differential at plus 18. Going into tonight, the Yankees' run differential was 117. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not even close. I mean, the Yankees really should walk to the World Series. I mean, the rest of the AL is awful. If
It
they don't
is.
make the World Series, it's because they beat themselves. It's not because anybody else beat them. I mean, that's how bad the American League is this year. Um, but we got guys like Ben Rice, who's going to be an All-Star. Schlittler is going to be an All-Star. Bellinger is going to be an All-Star. They're going to vote Judge in as an All-Star because he played enough games to qualify. Um, so when we get Judge back, maybe we get Trent Grisham back. Spencer Jones is playing well. Maybe we just shore up the little holes that we have and just try to beat the Dodgers again. Because I think it's going to be the Dodgers. So maybe we get a rematch, and maybe this time we win because there's problems within the Dodger clubhouse. And if we win this year, I don't have to watch baseball ever again. So because that means Judge gets his ring. Judge goes down in infamy as one of the best Yankees ever. And, I don't have to watch baseball for a year. And if it comes back in 2 years, then we have this foundation, right? Now we have Schlittler, who's only 24. We have Max Fried, who's only 28. We're going to have great pitching no matter what for the next, 5, 6 years. We have Ben Rice. We have Cody Bellinger. We have for the next at least 4 years. So, like, the Yankees are going to have a good foundation and be a good team moving forward past Garrett Cole when he retires, when Aaron Judge decides to hang it up here, maybe in a few years. So the Yankees' future is looking bright, and you have to give credit to Brian Cashman to that. He's just lucky that the rest of the American League stinks. So he just do the right thing at this deadline, really make this the best chance that we have, because everyone clearly knows that this is going to be a bloodbath with the CBA. So just do what it takes. Just make that big trade now. Get that monkey off your back that every Yankee fan hates you. And let's just see how the cards fall in the playoffs.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, Zach, I want to thank you for being my guest today. This is Zack Barba of the Kingdom.
The Kingdom, baby.
And go ahead.
We record pretty much every Wednesday. Every other Wednesday. Episodes go out on Thursday. We're on Spotify, Podbean. Trying to get back on Apple because we did a logo change, and Apple is a pain in the ass with trying to get logos correct for them because they're very specific in what they want to do. So we'll get that back up and running. But we're normally on Spotify, Podbean. We have YouTube as well. Check us out. Me, my co-host Pete, Ray's on there, and it's the Kingdom. We got a bunch of people on there all the time. So check it out.
Awesome, man. Well, again, thank you for coming on with me today and being my first guest. And I look forward to having you on many times in the future.
Love it. Love doing it.